All right. So it's been about a year since I met Mo, and we're really excited to have Mo Lauchert on. The reason why I was excited to have him on is when you meet a creative person in the field, it's just fun to pick their brains and find out how they got there and what they're going to do next, and just kind of see what they're thinking about. So Mo, I'm excited to have you on the show. Thanks for coming on. You've been hiding, you've been ducking, but we finally roped you in.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Been a while since the offer. Been slacking.
Yeah, I mean, we met when we did the Norda event at Rogue Running in Oakland, California. That was about a year ago when they were debuting the 002, which is the lower stack trail shoe. You do a lot of work with Norda, but before we get into that, let's talk about like what you do and like you as a person.
Oh man. Yeah, starting off with a loaded question. So I guess I would describe myself as a photographer, although I do have like that imposter syndrome of like, a lot of people want to call themselves photographers, and then I see that and I'm like, do I even want to like introduce myself as that? I just kind of like taking pictures. But I've been doing that for a while now. I studied that in college. And then as far as hobbies, I mean, any one of my friends will kind of say like it just depends on the week, and I'm into something new. So
you bring up a good thing. Like now that there's the Instagram and social media, a lot of people call themselves photographers, and you download Lightroom and you can get a nice camera and you can start taking pictures and you can start doing stuff without necessarily having all the fundamentals down and still take a decent photo. I think the big separation is you actually get hired to take photos.
Yeah, that's funny you say that. I was talking with a friend recently, and I was saying how if you give somebody a really nice camera and then kind of some like a crash course on how to edit something nice, I could like take somebody, I feel like over like a course of a couple days and have them like shooting really quality stuff. But I think maybe the departure between like, what do you call yourself? Is it a photographer? Is it a this or is it a that? Is I feel like nowadays more often than not I'm being hired for the ideas and not so much the execution, because I kind of think with how accessible it all is now, the execution is kind of the baseline. It's kind of like if you're on location trying to like, oh, I got to take a second to think about how to set the camera, like you're kind of behind the curve already, because like everyone now, like with all these YouTube videos and tutorials, like a week of studying and you can kind of maybe get enough technical know-how condensed into that week as I got in my 4-year education on how to do photography. So yeah, it's more about the ideas.
I've always said, because I do it on the graphic design side and I take photos myself and stuff. And what I've noticed, and especially when I used to hire, because I was in a creative director position for a while, you can find people who have technical skills. So somebody who knows how to put the settings right in the camera, who knows how to do that stuff. But you can't, I think the magic part is finding someone who can actually see, like who has, like, you can't teach that. You can't teach, I mean, I guess you can teach composition and stuff like that, but just the concept and the ideas and maybe like how to see things differently than most people would. And we see it even with, mundane objects, taking pictures of it. If you have somebody who's creative and has like ideas, they can take something and make it interesting. I don't want to like, I don't know how much art history, but like Duchamp taking the toilet and turning it sideways and, that kind of stuff. But, that's where I think the value comes in. And I think that's why people seek people like you out, is maybe you see things or try to see things in a different way.
Yeah. It's such a back and forth for me, because when it's like, you got to have a lot of confidence in your idea and like, hey, I want to try it this way. I want to do it this way. I want to whatever. But then it's always like, well, is that a good idea? Is like, should I really be trying to do that? But I guess maybe what I've learned, especially just in the past like 2 years, is like with how homogenous and how self-referential, especially like trail running photos are, it almost any idea other than like beautiful location running with some beautiful model talent like striding through the mountains is gonna at the very least yield like really interesting photos. And for me, I think that's kind of been the core is I feel like you don't have to be a super accomplished trail runner or a super like oh I've got my 80 100 like 1,000 hours in the sport. Like you can still take a good image, and it's more about the approach to that. Whereas if it's just about like, oh, I bet I can copy that one dude who's really he's getting hired for gigs or something, like it's more of a I don't know, more of a rip than it is like a reinterpretation.
Yeah.
I could go on
So
and on about this.
can you name some of the companies that you've worked with in the past?
Oh, well, Norda and Satisfy, I think, are maybe the most have the most optics, especially lately with like visuals and their kind of style. Man, I've done work for a lot of hunting and fishing brands, travel, leisure, Call of Duty, the video game in 2019.
I didn't
That
know they
reboot.
needed photographers.
Yeah, well, that was like because they're all about photorealism, or at least at the time.
Yeah.
And so we did a lot of like everything from like photogrammetry, like scanning people so that they could have references
Oh,
to
wow.
be put in the game, to like they've got so many like in-game assets, calling cards and loading screens and all sorts of stuff like that. Which is and then like a bunch of bike brands like Specialized and Pivot. But it's funny. It's kind of like whatever's in season. So I've bounced around a lot.
I mean, that's crazy. I think most people would love to be working with those brands. And I mean, you talk about the ones that are doing really well and kind of selling the emotion and the lifestyle of the sport. I mean, right now, especially in running, Satisfy and Norda are doing an amazing job. When we met in Oakland, you were talking about doing something that I thought I didn't even really understand what you were talking about, but you sounded passionate about it. So I was like, all right, this sounds cool. You talked about shooting the next shoot with infrared. Can you explain, first off, when you're shooting on a camera with infrared, what does that mean?
Well, yeah. So there's like two different kinds. So I think maybe the kind that people are the most aware of, it's like heat vision.
Yeah.
I think you kind of seen it a lot more lately in like music videos and stuff. But so I have a modded camera that basically it can capture certain colors like just true, but then depending on where that color lands in the color spectrum, it totally just throws the colors like out of whack. And so the Spain shoot, which I mean I think that dropped like last year sometime.
Yeah.
We shot that on infrared, and I pitched Adam at Norda about like, hey, what if we did this thing? Because I saw this old photo, like photo journal of like these soldiers in Africa, and the photographer had photographed them on like old, I think it's called old like Aerochrome film, like it was a film stock made for military applications because it would turn all the green foliage like pink and red, and so anything that wasn't natural foliage like military locations that were hidden by foliage would just be the same color. So you could like very easily fly over, take a picture, and be like, oh, there are all the tanks. And so it has this really beautiful effect. And so there's a way to mod a camera where you could get that effect without having to spend $100 on a roll of film. Yeah.
So that was pretty interesting as far as a take. And the photos came out sort of, I would say, almost otherworldly, kind of like Mars, like landscape, kind of like just kind of blown out. Were you happy with the results?
Yeah, it's funny because a lot of times, again, it's like is an idea good or not? And with this, I mean, we were flying over to Spain. We were they were investing a lot of money and time into it, but I had never done like a campaign on like a modded infrared camera. So there is that confidence that you have to have in the idea, but then I mean, I guess to backtrack on the point, like the technical ability to make it work regardless of what the results are. And but I think it helped because before the shoot, Adam and I had gotten together a bunch of different times, talked about the idea. We were referencing like old like 80s alien, sci-fi type shows and movies, and I try to draw inspiration from industries outside of photography. Like, it's actually pretty rare that I am like, oh, this photographer, let's like that's really cool. Let me just try to do that because again, it's such an easy path to ripping somebody off. But it's a little easier to like draw from sculpture and video games and even like
Themes.
non-visual mediums. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, in the end, you're trying to convey a feeling. So whether it's through like, obviously a good photo does that typically, journalistic photos, that kind of stuff. But what you're doing is more of like the same way that like the reason why Blade Runner looks like Blade Runner, or you can look at certain movies and go, okay, that's the language, that's the visual language they're using to tell this story. Now, when you go out and take a risk like this, you have a client paying you and you set up the camera this way. Are you a little nervous that you shot everything with a regular camera too, just in case this didn't pan out the way you thought it would?
Well, it was funny because when I get myself like stuck in a train of thinking or an idea, I've had the personal experience of pitching an idea, diluting it, or pitching an idea and not myself being 100% sold on the idea, and then it kind of turns out as like it's not quite the idea, but it's not quite the traditional stuff, so it falls somewhere in the middle where it's not that great. So when I was pitching the idea, I was already sold. I was like, we're going to shoot this whole thing. I'm not bringing a regular camera. I'm doing this whole thing. But then it was Adam's more level-headedness. I was like, well, let's bring a regular camera just in case. And if there's any really great compositions, we'll just double it up. And so we did a bunch of that. But it's you can't pitch the idea and then you yourself as the artist be the one who's already backtracking,
bailing out.
Yeah. Like I'll let the client, or I'll let Adam in this case, or a producer or someone say, well, let's maybe do some other stuff. I'll let them make that decision. But yeah, I think I've seen a lot of instances where there's a really cool concept and a really cool idea. There's so many great ideas out there, but it's always like what gets through the fine mesh filter of the owner of the brand or the board, that makes those decisions, which more often than not, I don't necessarily think like these are people that have either artistic degrees or experiences in production or things like that. So it's always a give and take. You have to know how to speak the language of, yes, it's 10 for you and 1 for me, but that 1 for me is going to be sick. But we can get the rest of the 10.
I do find like in the creative field, a lot of times you'll judge work that gets published or work that gets sold, and you don't really see the artist's favorites in there. Like whether you're designing a logo or taking a photo or whatever you are, painting, that usually the client, like if you give them 3 choices, they don't pick the one that maybe that you would put as your favorite example of your work. And I do think that when you're talking about ideas and kind of as an artist putting something out like, hey, let's do this, and then having the freedom to do it. I mean, I look at Norda putting their trust in you and saying, okay, you're a creative, you got some good ideas, we do this really well, we're going to let you kind of run with what you do well. That's got to be like a dream client, because you just don't get that as a creative.
Yeah, and well, I can always have like fun on a shoot. I think a reason why certain artists get hired or rehired is again, it's not just the technical. Yes, it is like how creative you are, but in my experience, it's also been like how you run show and how you direct people and how you like front end, back end, all of the production. And a client like Norda, it really has helped to get in on like sort of the base level, because yeah, there's just a lot of like they don't really have a preconceived experience set of, we only want this, we've had a this kind of experience in the past, or we're looking to have this kind of experience now. And when it happened, kind of like with Satisfy, it happened with Norda, where like the first shoots we did for them were like, hey, we believe in this creative idea. We don't like, it'd be cool if we could get paid in like expenses, or and maybe a little bit on the side, but we have this idea and we want to execute it really, really well. The benefit for you is that, you know, it's basically a free shoot. The benefit for us is that we have complete creative control. And that sort of arrangement in the beginning, if you can build that trust, helps to like shape how the brand wants to interact with you like later on. But I will give, you know, Nick and Will a credit. Like if we come to them with an idea, they're not necessarily, you know, they're not like, no, you know, like we kind of, they say, hey, we need photos of like the 03 or this new colorway.
Yeah.
There you go. And so really nice.
Have you put out ideas out there that were maybe a little too wild for not maybe just Norda, but other clients?
Well, I mean, I'm always sort of pitching ideas, or if I see something creative or something, I'm like, oh, how can I like morph that into like a photo thing? And it really comes down to more logistics than like somebody saying that's a stupid idea. I mean, if I stopped thinking of ideas because someone said I had a stupid idea, I would have been done with photography like in college. But I mean, I'm
not even saying it had to be stupid. It just wild.
Yeah.
Like, is there, like something that like you're saying location. So I'm guessing that you've pitched locations that it would be too difficult or too hard to shoot or too expensive.
It's always like a logistic thing. So I mean, I had pitched like a couple of years ago, maybe I pitched Norda. Like I'd seen this dude who like made some sort of like, it's like a pipe, and it's got a bunch of holes drilled in it, and you know they feed like some sort of flammable gas through it, and it makes like a bunch of like little candle flames, and then you blast music through it, and the candle the fire height adjusts based on the wavelength of the music. And I was like, oh, let's use that. And then with like how curated and hip it is to like be a runner, and then also be into like really weird niche cool like bands, like, and then we get the band to be the talent, and then we can like use this sort of weird like flame thing to blast their music through it, so that the, you know, whatever. And to Adam's credit, he was like, oh, that's pretty sick. And that was the end of that. Like we never ended up using that idea because it was just like way too difficult. But I mean, you know, having the creative freedom to just throw out ideas is something that like I can't overlook ever. So, but there are some wild ideas.
Have you gotten to work with any bands through your shoots?
Any bands? Oh God, I hope I'm not forgetting it, but no. I'm not like the hippest music guy. I'm, as far as like the come up from Satisfy, Fame, and Norda, I'm like the least musically inclined. So
all right. I was wondering the Turnstile collab. I didn't know if you got to be part of that.
No, I do like Turnstile though, but yeah, it's I think if it was based solely on like music taste, I have like a very eclectic, you know, taste in music, so I think I might be the last person they would call if they had like a really cool music collab going on.
All right, so what would you be if you're going for a run and listening to music today? What would be on that playlist?
Oh my God, I gotta look.
I'll be really shocked if you're a Swiftie.
I mean, I mean, I don't mind. I really mostly don't like Taylor Swift because she's dating Travis Kelce on the Chiefs, and I'm a Bills fan. But
I can understand that.
But my most recents are Ghostface Killah's album "Set the Tone."
Okay.
Loosen the Yakuza album. It's like a French band, and then like David Bowie is on there, and then like some ambiance stuff. And
I mean, this is all
salt and
good
pepper.
stuff.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
It's
I
all,
mean,
yeah.
it's just it's all over the place though. Yeah.
Little 80s rap.
Skyrim soundtrack. Yeah.
There you go. All right. So obviously there's people out there that are trying to do what you do and be in the space that you want to do. And there's enough for everybody. So I'm doubting you're like a gatekeeper kind of person, but what would be your advice on if someone wanted to get into shooting and shooting specifically for endurance sports, whether it's mountain biking, skiing, running, surfing, whatever, what would be your advice to them?
Oh man. I think initially my advice would be like it's hard to sell a client on an idea or on a set of images or on a style or on what if you haven't shot it. I used to be a production assistant at Backcountry in Park City, and I'd get emails sometimes from people, "Hey, I'd love to shoot for Backcountry," and that's it. And I'd be like, "Tell me about yourself, about your work. Like, where do I like? I don't, they wouldn't even put a link to their website or their Instagram." So I think the biggest thing that I can say is if you're looking to get into the sport or like anything really, like there's a part of me that has had a lot of success in like calling up the homies. I want to go do a shoot. I'll give you all the photos. I want to build up a deck of my own work in my own style, not a master study, not a, oh, I saw a cool thing. Let me see if I can recreate it. But like, you have to act as if you have the client already to motivate you to do the kind of quality of work that you would be confident in sharing. So if I wanted to reach out to another running brand, and I didn't have any of this past work, I would call up the friends who run a lot, go to the cool locations, or try to do something weird and different, and just like shoot those photos. Not just like I really found it frustrating in college when they were like, you just got to shoot through the burnout, and I'm like that doesn't work for me. Like I would put the camera down for months until I was like re-inspired and lived enough life to give me more motivation to go and shoot. Then I would go and shoot and then build up a deck, and then before you know it, you got 2 or 3 different shoots of running or of the thing in particular that you want to do that you can then pitch out. So when you reach out to the production assistant or the creative directors or the art directors, you're not just saying, hey, please hire me. I promise you I could do a good shoot. But on the very base level, you have some work that you can show that is of the style or of the artistic mentality that you would then try to pitch them or get them on the hook for. And then like if you email somebody or call somebody or do anything, make it easy for them. I think working in production, it was always like, check out my work. And it's like, I'm busy.
Yeah.
If you don't send me a deck in the email or at least a website to like click, unless
It's
you
over.
fall in that magical realm of like Friday afternoon where everyone's pretending to be busy, I'm not going to click. I'm not going to like take the time to Google you. And that sounds like really trite. Like, oh, you can't just like Google their name and like look them up. But
no, I get it. Like we're not, I think you get to a point where you're past the hustle of just trying to get your name out there, get in there. And at that point you have clients and you have responsibilities and you have stuff. So when you say make it easy for you, I totally understand it. It's like I have 20, 30 emails in my inbox within an hour, and I'm gonna go and look at those, and half of them just on the subject line I'm gonna delete without reading, and then as I go through, if something catches my eye, it better have something interesting. But you're probably maybe in my emails it'll be people who want to either write for Believe in the Run or do something for Believe in the Run, and so there's 3 or 4 or 5 people in there, a day that are asking about that stuff. And like you said, if you don't make it easy, if you don't make it something that's like immediately attention grabbing and easy to access, I'll just move on to the next person that has an email in there. And unfortunately you could miss somebody who's talented, but maybe that's a good lesson for them to figure out, like, how do I grab someone's attention? Because I think when we send an email, and I'm guilty of this too, my email is important. Why isn't that person reading my email and getting back to me? you have to think about their time and time management and how you're presenting in there. So, and
Yeah.
cold emails are rough.
Oh man, I mean, I still cold email sometimes. It's like I still haven't even found the perfect subject line. Like, I think I'm at the point. Like I've sent hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of. I think my first year going full time freelance, I sent 400 cold emails,
Mm,
and there's a part of me that's like, yeah, I'm hustling, I'm
yeah.
working hard, but then now there's a part of me that's like, can I take some of those emails back because they were so bad? It was like I was there was a point where I was sending like paragraphs like over
Mm,
explaining who I am and what my story is, and I'm like,
nobody
thank you
cares.
to the yeah, and I'm like, thank you to the people who took the time to give me a chance way back in the day when I was sending that, because now I kind of feel like it really has to sort of just be like, hey man, you know what I want. This is what it
Exactly.
is. Here's my work. Like
You don't
I
need the I hope this email finds you well.
yeah, no, because the email's gonna find me like 5 cups deep, like of
Yeah.
coffee, just like at 6 a.m. Like, got to do a bid, and I'm just like, oh my god, and then like his email pops up, and I'm like, yeah, I'm doing real well right now, thanks. You know?
You do need to feel though, like, especially when you don't have a ton of work on your plate, those emails probably felt like you were doing something to move your career forward. So like from a beginner standpoint, those are important, but like, you're right. Like you're not, a potential employer is not going to read through your life story and be happy where you went to undergrad school and that found the passion of fly fishing. And now you want to, travel the world taking photos of people fly fishing. You know,
Yeah.
that's when a picture is worth 1,000 words. You know,
Yeah, it's like
but
this is everything you need to know about me in 5 photos. There you go. Well, and I think it is difficult. I think to the point of like, if you don't have a lot of work, or I mean, because I have like times where like last year in April I was shooting. So we did the Spain thing, and then I had 22 hours back. Like we flew back. I
oh
had
wow,
22 hours in Salt Lake, hit a bike ride, and then flew out to to Korea for a shoot for Lululemon, which was
oh
super
wow.
fun. And but then there's times where it's like, and then there's 3 months of nothing. So do I gotta send all these emails now? Like, what do I do? And sometimes, at least for me, it's like, yeah, maybe sometimes you do have to do that, or try to set up a passion shoot. It doesn't have to be a big one, but just something maybe to get to keep the momentum. But then even for me, I think it's also like a lifestyle thing. Like, I think it's important to like, especially somebody who's just like, I'm always bouncing off the walls. Like I was up until like 6 a.m. last night, just like sitting in bed, looking at my ceiling, like thinking of creative ideas and just like letting my brain wander. Like I think that's pretty healthy. But then there's times where it's like, I have to put the camera down. I have to like not even think about photo. There was a time where for me, if I was like sitting there refreshing my email, just waiting for replies to emails I had
Mm.
just sent people, I would go on a run, or I would go on a bike ride, or I would take my motorcycle just like on a loop downtown. And more often than not, just getting out and doing something, like the universe knows that like when you're sitting there waiting for the email, versus like going out and living your life. And so then I would like do a lap around Salt Lake, come back, and then I'd have a reply to the email. I
Well,
think,
that's an interesting thing because I don't think a lot of people think about that. Like they imagine, and I would even imagine this, you're always off on photo shoots. You're always getting hired. People are calling all the time. Hey, can you come over here, Mo, and shoot this? You've got plenty of downtime. And as a freelancer, as somebody who's dependent on work to provide your income, how nerve wracking or how do you deal with the in between stress like levels? Because I mean, do you like how they have those charts where like what I actually do, what my friends think I do, and all that, and that I'm guessing like nobody ever thinks about, hey, I've got downtime, and it's not fun downtime because you have to be a little bit preoccupied with, hey, is there another job coming, or is I got to stay
yeah.
on top of things? Can you kind of talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. Well, so I'm I can be a very idle person, but it's like I try to be like either resting or like experiencing other things. So like, I mean, I'm a big video game nerd, And so if I'm back from a shoot, I'm like investing in like amazing works of art in the video game space or going to the movies, and like the routine is really different, but I don't think it's that much different than like what a like a typical healthy human being should be doing. Like your life should not always be about work or always be about like slacking off or something. And so uh, a big part of how I like to operate um, in photography is I don't I don't get inspiration from the shoots that I'm already doing or that I've already been on. The inspiration comes from like a conversation I had with a friend, or like I was, working on my car, like because I like tinkering with stuff, and then it made me think of this random weird thing. And the offshoots to creativity aren't necessarily like within the box of like the creative industry. And so I do like to fill my idle time with like learning new shit, or if I can't swear, you just let me know.
Let's yeah, you can swear,
Keep it
swear all you want.
okay.
Yeah.
I got a pot mouth, but so I like to always be doing stuff, but it's not always like creative stuff. And I think for me, it wouldn't work well to like be a working creative and then be an idle creative and then be like always thinking of creativity constantly, because I need a little bit of this going on,
Well, you brought up video games.
Yeah.
I had to kind of pull back from video games just because I would spend way too much time in there. But what are the ones that like get you going? Like, what are the ones that you find like inspirational as far as visually and stuff like that?
Well, so sometimes it'll be like purposeful. So like I was doing a lot of like Western themed shoots like back in the day. So obviously it was like Red Dead Redemption 2, because they put like the amount of detail they put into that stuff is just like absolutely insane. And the amount of like interactivity that's built into. But then there's like there's teams of designers and stylists and prop designers for video games. Love it or hate it, Bethesda came out with Starfield. It's basically Skyrim in space, and the designs, the imagination that people have for like different spacesuits and different spaceships and different things you can do. It's like crazy to me, and it's something that I would love to see more in photography. Like I would love to see more photography and be like, whoa, that shit is crazy to me. But it's so like in and of its own thing, at least in like the running space or in like the commercial space, in the industries that I'm in. But like a cinematographer, somebody makes a movie and there's like a piece of trash floating down the street. Like somebody had to make a decision. Like we want some trash in this scene floating down, and then it lives for like a fraction of a second. But like there's teams of people. Like there's an Instagram account I follow called Scott Prop and Roll, and he like talks a lot about. He's like a prop master. He talks a lot about how they had to do all these little things and the different techniques they had to use. I'm like, there's teams of people that, okay, we want this paper bag to rip this certain way for this one scene. And there's like, I don't know, 5, 8, 10, 20, I don't know how many, but there's like
Making
people
sure
thinking like that. And,
Yeah.
and so with photography too, I try to give that amount of attention to certain things. Like I love putting little Easter eggs in things, and I love like, oh, maybe we can reference something here that only the people on production will ever know. But like, I think the difference between a rip and even like a genuine idea, if there even can be those anymore, is just like your take. Like, what is your take? I would love someone's take. And so to tie that back in, it's like video games, movies, books, like product design, just walking through the woods. Like you're constantly ingesting things, and I've seen this a lot in my own work. Is I don't always use that for my photos, and I'm like, why? This is like a whole pool of things that I could be pulling from. I even only just recently started thinking about like because I was watching this interview about this artist, and they were talking about their childhood and how it's such a big impact on them. I was like, I don't think I've ever thought about my childhood at all when I take pictures. That's a whole like untapped thing. And so I'm like, oh, like let me just like sit in this chair and like do a deep dive on my history, which could be a bad thing. But like thinking about it now in the frame of reference of a creative, it's like I think there's a lot of interesting takes on things that don't get used because there is no artistic connection between those things. So like when I'm referencing a video game, I'm always trying to like pull all these threads together and tie them
Little
into a.
pieces. What do you think of composite photography? Like,
I think it's a tool. I think it's a cool technique. I don't necessarily think it like it. Composite photography was big when I was in college, which is like 2010 through 2014. Um, like in like everyone's watching Joel Grimes and all these other like photographers do like it's like this lit portrait and then you smack it onto somebody or so I don't know. I try to do different takes. They're not always that interesting, but I haven't like to be honest like have done a deep dive into like mastering that technique or but it's always on the shelf. I did a composite imagery for a Norda cinder pack. Like they wanted to show three different shoes, their quiver, the full thing, the 1, the 2, and the 3. And I'm like, well, we could just take pictures of the 1, 2, and 3 and like their environments, or we could just like show the same guy in the same environment. One he's like chilling, one he's over here, and then the other he's over there. And I mean, was it the most creative? Like maybe not, but I think there's all these techniques that whether they like have their time to shine as a fad or as like a thing, I think there's always going to be somebody out there who can take that tool and use it in a way that like blows people away.
yeah, I guess it's like music. Like you have traditionalists who would be like instrument, then you have samplers, you have DJs, you have all the different stuff, and as long as the music is good,
yeah, like who cares?
Go with it.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm always like on this like pendulum of we need to put all this thought and care and substance into the photos. Like it has to be more than just a picture. But then sometimes I like am out on a shoot and I just like, I don't know, like run that way. And then I take a picture. I'm like, holy shit, that's such a sick picture.
That's a good one.
It has no references and it has no like.
That's the stuff that makes me crazy though. It really does. Like, especially, when we're developing content for our channel and stuff like that. And I'll put tons of attention, use 3 different cameras, use a video camera, montage it all together. And it just doesn't hit, even though I think it looks amazing. I think, oh, wow, that's exactly the type of content I think that we should be doing all the time. Then we do something stupid like a shoe getting mashed by something and it's like 1 million views. And you're just like, how do you win in this world? Like, is there art or are we down to the level of just like, hey, the simplest thing that can grab someone's attention is what we should be going after. But I find that's the balance. Like, people chase the algorithm, and I don't even think you're as concerned with the algorithm because you're more concerned with like for clients and stuff like that, providing a product they enjoy and that resonates with their audience. But like the difference between creating for what will work versus what you love, I think that's the toughest thing for artists now in environment where we used to, like, you went to school for photography, so you used to have to take your photos, put them up in front of the class. Everybody would judge them and critique them, do all that. But it was an audience of 10 people, 14 people in the class, whatever it was.
Yeah.
Now we have an instant like audience of thousands and thousands and thousands of people. And you get instant feedback on whether or not, it may not even be comments. It may just be whether or not it gets love and likes and stuff like that. How much does that play into your thought process in creativity, or did you just ignore that and go after, like, I want a beautiful image that I'm proud of?
Well, I mean, I would love to say like I don't care what anybody thinks, but I'm like a really I'm like a really sensitive guy. So like, okay, so it's like to contextualize it, right? Like if I'm shooting for a client and I have like built up trust and I take a picture and I trust their like input and they say, hey man, this is great. I'm like, mission accomplished. Like I don't really care about someone who does, whatever, and they think the photo's bad or something. Like I don't care because the client's happy. we had a good experience on set. That's the other thing that people don't see is like,
Yeah.
how do you rationalize being an artist in today's day and age where everything seems to be on fire all the time? And it's like, you can have small, meaningful experiences with the people you're with. Like those are things you can control. And, and so
And you seemed really tight with, like, when we were out there with Adam, both Adams, Adam 1 and Adam Dirty Boy, and all the rest of the people working. You guys seem like I could see you guys getting in a van together and traveling across the country and everybody having a great time.
and yeah, and we have done just that. I have videos of like we're eating like unrefrigerated deli meats on like just regular bread and with wine, like yeah. And so there's like these great experiences you can have, which again, like that affects me personally on whether I like the images or not. So there's like the commercial business side of like, well, if the client's happy, I'm happy. I don't care what anybody else thinks. But then there's like the side that like I used to work in Houston. I used to work for NASA at the Neutral Buoyancy Lab as a safety diver. It's the big pool where they train the astronauts for spacewalks. And on my last day there, they let me take my old underwater film camera, a Nikon EOS 5, and just take some film photos. And then I sent them to my buddy at the time who was at this website called DP Review. They do everything from like camera reviews and stories and all that stuff. And he was like, "Hey man, these like film photos, like nobody has these. These are amazing." Like he interviewed me and I was giving him all like the why I shot it on film, why I did it like this, all that. Like really, I was like, this is like, at the time I was like, I love this stuff. And there was like comments that were like, why do you shoot it on film? Doesn't he know we have digital cameras now? And like, this composition's messy. And I'm like, well, I couldn't really tell astronauts to like, hey, don't go there, go over here. And just like all these things. And I'm just like, just people like beating down on the photos. And I'm just like, man, this sucks. Like, but
See, I would think arts, like going through school doing it, you would have gotten like, I feel like as much as I hated it in college, I went to art school.
Yeah.
As much as I hated sitting there and having people just rip apart your work. And you knew some people were ripping it apart because they had actual good feedback, because you would remember it and you go back and you'd be like, yeah, I did kind of half-ass it on that part. And you tighten it up and you notice your work gets better. But then there's some dudes who are just like, they just want to shit on what you do because maybe they feel threatened by your work or whatever.
Maybe those are all the guys in the DP Review comments on that thing. But no, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think I've just been able to like cope with it better. Like I have confidence in like my identity as an artist and photography and I've done it long enough to just, you kind of can filter out whose critiques and insights like matter to the process or to the, the creative work. But I mean, it's still not ever a good feeling for somebody, at least for me. Like, I don't know. I never grew that like super thick skin of like, it just is what it is. And, that's what art school's for. I'm like, but this sucks. Like, I don't know.
I get it. We're on YouTube. We get anonymous people just trashing you, whatever you're doing. So you do have to, I think I filter it through is this an actual good, like, even if it's a nasty comment, is it coming from a place that's true? Like, is there some truth to this that maybe I could learn something? Or is this just a bitter person that, wishes that they were getting the opportunity that maybe you have to take photos in a pool with a bunch of astronauts? Because not too many people are going to get that opportunity.
Well, and to that point, I mean, that's a good point. That's a great way of like looking at the whole, like, just the internet can be the funniest and most inviting place or like the worst place like in the world.
It's both.
It's both at the same time. Yeah, it can be both. Yeah. But yeah, I try to not give all the like was the shoot successful or not, or fun or not, or good for me or not, based on like the kinds of people. I mean, there's even times where like a photo of just like the product will lead, and it all, they always get like, I don't know, hundreds and thousands of likes and views, but then like the photos that are like really emotive or something won't get any, and it's just like, am I doing something wrong here? But then brands still are like, no, I mean, you have these photos that like, just, you have to show what the product looks like. and
Yeah.
then this is my brand. And so there's the two different kinds.
It's you're probably hitting the nail on the head there, because like the stuff that is emotive or has personal meaning to you, you're like, you see it, but somebody scrolling through endlessly through, Instagram or whatever, they might see it and just be, another person running in a field,
Yeah.
keep
Well,
going.
and it's the medium too. It's not. I mean, a lot of people use it for like different ways. But I mean, I don't know. Even myself, sometimes I'm just like scrolling through. Oh, that's cool. Oh, that's cool. And, like someone posts a caption, I'm just like, I'm not reading all that stuff. But then other times I'm like, I want to like tell me more about this. So
Exactly. And
you got
yeah, it's a weird place. All right. So let's change the subject here just a little bit. Let's say emergency sirens are going off. You have to grab one camera. And one lens, let's say. What's it going to be?
I did it. It's going to be.
Not everybody can hear that.
Oh yeah, I forgot. It's like not a visual.
He's showing us the camera on the video.
So love it or hate it. I have it's just on my side counter here. I have a Contax T3. It's the 70 years anniversary edition. Yeah.
So that's like a pocket camera there.
Pocket film, 35 mil, like every nerd.
What's the lens on that?
I think it's just a native, like, what is this? A 35? Yeah, it's just a native little 35 on there.
So that's your thing. Like if you were running out, it's got a flash on it. It's got everything you need to take. You would be happy with going on a trip right now and taking all the photos with that.
Oh yeah. Well, so like I think, I mean, I'm gonna dive into like just all the photographers in chat. Everyone's like, oh, film and film and film and film, and oh, I love film. I mean, film's great. I love film. I've shot a lot of film. It influences how I like to edit my photos.
Wait, is that a digital camera or a film camera?
No, this is a film camera. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Camera. But film can also be a pain in the ass. And so I mean, I've got a Pentax 672, big medium format, clunky, love it. It like aesthetically, I'm like, this is like me in a camera form. But there's other times where like you want it to just be easy. There's like complete artistic trains of thought about just the idea of the snapshot. Some people see it as lazy. Some people see it as like the most pure because you're not overthinking and you're not trying to over curate. And so I would say more often than not, if I am trying to do photography for leisure, which is actually pretty rare, I will grab whatever is the easiest and just go with that. Because if I overthink it, if I'm going on a trip with some friends and I'm like, oh, let me just grab this camera and that camera and this camera, I'll still end up using just the one that's the easiest or the one that's the most available.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, film, I just think film's rough because, as someone who grew up with film, pre-digital cameras and stuff like that, I realized out of a roll, like when we used to get 24 shots or 36 shots of photos, I would usually get one or two photos that I actually liked in that film roll. So for me, that's where, the digital comes in and I'm like, okay, I need to see it, delete it or go over it. But yeah, the idea of like snapping a shot and not seeing it for 3 weeks or 2 weeks or
years.
Yeah, it's not going to work out for me.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, there's times, especially when I'll get like negatives back, and I'm like, oh man, I should have taken like 3 or 4 more iterations of that shot. But I think there's something like inherently beautiful about not having for one, people will say you don't have the instant gratification. So it kind of like becomes more of a honest reflection of your process. Like, do you want to give it 5 more takes, or do you want to just say like, hey, it was a beautiful moment to experience personally, and the photo will be what it is. And having like physical negatives that you can't the physical negatives you can't like alter or change or adjust the focus or whatever. Like I allow like my aesthetic to be influenced by that. So I've got old negatives from college, where at the time I'm like, this photo sucks, this one sucks, this one's not good, this one's not good, because of whatever frame of mind I was in at the time. But I'll look back at some of them now and be like, there was something there. Like, I actually kind of like this. Maybe I'll play around with that and, a decade later. So I think it's just completely different. If I was treating film like the process of how I do digital, I don't think I would ever be very pleased. But there's something like, I think, well, a lot more honest about like, especially in today's day and age, just having to let go of like, you know what?
Control.
Yeah. And you can, like, it helps me be more in the moment too. Like, for the longest time, I felt like Squid on Rocket Power. Like, I was the friend who people had around just because he had a camera, like going on trips or something. But nowadays I'm like, if I do bring a camera, it's not like apathy or I'm just going to put minimal effort. It's because I don't necessarily think I have the mental bandwidth to constantly be like on the whole time.
Yeah.
Like, photography at this this level. I got to save that for those times I'm in the van traveling cross country with both Adams.
Yeah. So when you're done with the film there, you're right, nowadays you must have some sort of scanner or something that brings it into digital, or when they develop the film, do they provide a digital file as well?
They can do either. For the diving photos, I developed those in my bathroom and then scanned them with like at the time it seemed fancy, but it's like I don't know, it's like a $35, like 35 mil one frame at a time scanner that's like really cheap. But nowadays I think it's more efficient and better for my mental to have professional developers do it. And then, you can pay a couple bucks more for high res scans.
All right, cool. All right, man, this has been a lot of fun. I think that it's interesting because it's funny how much at this point, how much people who are running are becoming content creators and grabbing cameras and going out. And there's so many different options now to kind of like capture things visually. But it's always good to see, like when I'm going through my feed and I see a Norda shot and stuff, I'm like, I think that's probably a Mo shot, and yeah, I can go through it. So it's just interesting, the cross section that. I think no matter where you are or what you're doing or what your passion is, somehow visually doing something visually creative is coming into it because people want to share their experience. And I think now we're at a point where that's either going to be through Instagram or social or some way to share what we're doing. So I know that it was a pleasure meeting all of you guys out at the Norda event. I had a really good time, and you guys just all seemed like you had it dialed in as far as like creativity and enjoying what you were doing. And that's the most important thing. Like, I think what attracted me to talking to all of you guys is everybody there seemed to be interested and enjoying what they were doing. And you've probably seen people in different places that it's a job. It's a way, but like this is a lifestyle for you, and the camera happens to be part of that lifestyle. Am I right?
Yeah, no, I mean, there all throughout college and even like early on in my career, there's people saying, don't like, oh, don't make what you love your job, or I don't shoot this thing because I love it too much. And I'm like, I don't know. I understand that as like you don't want to, take something that you are absolutely enamored with and like muddy it up with business politics. But like, with running, with cycling, with flying, with diving, with fishing, with all this stuff, like these are all things that I've in at least some capacity love doing. And because of that, I have an opinion on these things and I have a take on the visuals that I would like to see. And so that's been fuel for me. Like, I can't imagine like only doing photos of things that I that I don't enjoy doing.
I know. Food photography.
Yeah, I'm like, no, I hate this. That's why I'm taking pictures of it, like to spite it or something.
I think that's the dumbest advice ever. Like, I lean in hard into what you're passionate about. If you stop being passionate about it, move on to something else that you're passionate about.
Yeah, because like, I mean, with the speed project and doing that for Satisfy, if you're not having a good time, like at least with the subject matter, then you're not going to have a good time being in a van that has no working AC for 3 days in the middle of the desert.
Smelly MFers.
With smelly people. Like, you're not going to have a good time. So you might as well, like, at the very least, start with stuff that you enjoy. At least, I don't know. I've been able to find balance with that.
Yeah. All right, Mo. Well, thank you for your time. And we really appreciate talking to you. I know I had to drag you out for over a year here, so we finally got you on. But that
All good.
completes my my dirty boy Mo combo.
Yeah,
I've now collected them all. I think I'm not sure if we've had Adam on or not. I know we've talked to him. I'm not sure if it's been on actually recorded. I'll have to check on that. But yeah, so thanks for coming on and sharing a little
thanks
bit
for
of your
having me.
knowledge.